The land we call the United States began as untamed wilderness. Mountains shouldering clouds, rivers carving stone, forests older than memory itself. Here, for thousands of years, native peoples lived with the land, traveling its waters, sharing its game.
Long before any ships appeared on the horizon, nations were here, building homes from earth and cedar, shaping clay and stone, raising council fires beneath ancient skies. The Navajo, the Cherokee, the Lakota, the Haudenosaunee, each spoke their own language.
In the late 1400s and 1500s, European sailors pushed across the Atlantic and touched a vast, unfamiliar continent. With them came barrels of goods and dreams of fortune, alongside steel, disease, and war. Old worlds collided. Trade routes bloomed, frontiers shifted.
By the early 1600s, across the Atlantic's edge, British colonies began to take hold. Life here was harsh, full of salt wind, axe work, and endless planting. But each day the wilderness gave way a little more. New towns rose from the trees. Neighbors gathered
in taverns, at tables lit by flickering candles. Voices whispered the same grievance. Taxes imposed from an ocean away. Control tightened by decree. For every barrel tossed into the harbor, for every musket raised in protest, resolve hardened. And on 1,000 sheets of parchment, the idea took root.
On this day in 1776, in a hall in Philadelphia, brave leaders put pen to parchment.
A long, brutal war raged across fields, forests, and seas. Battles from Boston to Yorktown burned the cost of liberty into the soil. Yet through hardship, the colonies stood their ground until victory was at hand. When the smoke cleared,
they called it opportunity. A road to the horizon, fields for the taking. But every mile west pressed against nations already here, sovereign, rooted, unwilling to vanish. Promises were inked, then broken. Battles flared, power shifted. The land was more than lines.
A young nation was on the move, carving out new states, building new cities, fueling new industries. Rail lines stitched landscapes together. Riverboats and factories hummed with promise. But at its heart, the country was fragile.
1861, America split apart. Brothers faced brothers, states tore at the seams, north against south, in a deadly struggle over unity and human freedom. Hot lead and cold.
After 4 years of brutal war, the North prevailed. Slavery was abolished, and a nation, bloodied and battered, began the long work of healing. The scars ran deep, but roots of freedom took hold, growing stronger with each new generation. And though it took time, the
roads cut across the open land, iron wheels threading together a continent. Factories roared to life, their machines shaping steel and ambition in equal measure. And from ships that docked each day came millions of new dreamers. Hands calloused, hearts untested, stepping onto...
In the first decades of the 1900s, a young nation flexed new muscle. From bustling ports and roaring factories to vast training camps, the United States prepared to step onto the world stage. In the mud of France, American soldiers charged through fire.
Then came the Great Depression, a season of empty pockets and hungry nights. Factories fell silent, farms turned to dust, and hope was hard to find. But a new spirit rose. Programs put shovels in hands, pens to paper, and artists back to...
In the darkest days of the war, American factories roared to life, turning steel and sweat into bombers, ships, and hope. Across oceans, soldiers and nurses braved fire and fear, pushing beach by beach toward freedom. When the guns finally fell silent, a nation...
The civil rights movement was more than marches and signs. It was a fight for dignity, for the promise written into our nation. Leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. lifted voices that had long been silenced, demanding justice with words that still ring. Their courage opened schools.
In a single lifetime, humanity leapt from fire and steel to stars and circuits. We launch themselves beyond Earth, watch our planet rise in silence, and weave cities of light where vehicles drive themselves.
From a New Orleans street where brass horns chase the sunrise to a red carpet shimmering under midnight flashes. We made the soundtrack of the century, filmed the impossible, and dunked it home. Our games, our songs, our stories ricocheted across the planet.
Today, America is a mosaic, woven from countless cultures, backgrounds, and beliefs. Every note in its song, every stitch in its fabric was earned through struggle and progress and shared by those who dared to dream. We celebrate our differences, and in doing so...
The story of the United States is still being written, inked by miners who dared, soldiers who stood firm, and citizens who faced down injustice. It's told by explorers who reach higher, horses that run free, and minds that spark tomorrow's breakthroughs. By children learning their first words,